In the previous lessons, we looked at creating a custom entity using the Create Entity wizard. We looked at the staging table and the target query that was created by the wizard. Now in this lesson, let's look at the class that is used to support the custom entity in more detail. We're now back inside the AX development environment where we're looking at the DMF Invent Site Entity project. And we have a class here called the DMF Invent Site Entity class. Every entity that's used by the Data Import Export framework has a backing class which is used to support the entity. The DMF Invent Site Entity class backs the Invent Site entity that we created. Let's take a look at the code for this particular class. The first thing we're going to look at is the class declaration. An entity which is a DMF entity needs to extend from the DMF entity base class. And the other thing is it needs to have an attribute that says it's a DMF attribute. There are also two members in this particular class. The DMF Invent Site Entity member, which is the staging table, which represents the staging table, and the Invent Site object, which represents the target table. There are also a number of other methods on this particular class. You have the standard new method, which is used to create a new instance of this class. And you have a static construct method, which just calls the new method. The target is initialized by the main table that represents the target entity. Then you have the set target buffer method, which is used to initialize the instance of the table for the data sources. In some cases, it's possible that the target entity has multiple data sources. One of these is the main table that represents the entity. For instance, cust table might be the main table that represents the customer entity. Previously, we looked at the product entity where the invent table was the main table. The data source name parameter in this method points to the data sources that are present within the target entity query. In this class, we also have a jumpref method. The jumpref method points to the display menu item of the invent site that we provided in the wizard. So here you can see that the invent site menu item is used within the jumpref method. Then we have a set of generate methods. You can have any number of these methods. Each of these methods is used to transform the data from the staging to target or from target to staging. Let's look at one of these generate methods, the generate default dimension method. You can see that there are a few attributes that are set on this particular method. The DMF target transformation attribute, this is set to true. Then you have a DMF target transformation sequence attribute. This tells you the sequence in which these methods need to be run. Then you have the DMF target trans field list attribute, which tells you the list of fields that are part of the staging table that are used within this method. Then the method itself takes one parameter which is called staging to target, and this parameter tells you whether when the method is called, whether the data is flowing from the staging table to the target or whether it's flowing from the target to the staging. If we are moving from staging to target, then what this method is doing is it's taking the data in the default dimension field of the staging, and it's constructing the value for the target table. If we are instead moving from target to staging, which is when the staging to target is false. Then we take the target's default dimension and convert it into a dimension string, which is then set on the staging table. There are other methods here, like you have the generate tax branch refrec ID. This method has not yet been implemented, but we leave that as is. And finally, we have the get return fields method. This method is responsible for returning the default field in the target where the output of each of the transformation methods is supposed to map to. In this case, the output of the generate default dimension method is mapped to the invent site.default dimension field in the target. That brings us to the end of this lesson on creating a class to support a custom entity. In this lesson, we saw how the data import-export framework allows you to create a custom class for each entity that you create. Within this custom class, you can perform a number of different functions, such as initializing the target buffers, setting up the jump ref to navigate to the target, and performing transformations using X++ methods or business logic. In the next lesson, I will show you how to complete the creation of the entity by creating a new target entity and mapping the staging to target.